Hey everybody, Obersports here. Welcome to my 2017 Milwaukee Bucks season preview video. It's going to be out with the old and with the new. I just finished my Milwaukee Brewers 2017 season recap, and now I'm going to be previewing the 2017 Milwaukee Bucks season. So last season, the Milwaukee Bucks, they finished 42 and 40, exactly as I predicted. Actually, they were a first-round playoff exit. They lost to the Raptors in 6 games. They were the 6th seed. I expected them to be the 7th seed, but they actually got to the 6th seed, so that was pretty cool. They did take a 2-1 series lead in that series. I thought they were actually going to win the series, but the Raptors were just more experienced and a lot better than them at the time. So, um, overall, it was a good season last year for the Bucks. One that saw strides for many young players on the team, especially Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he is the main focal point of the team. Obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo is the entire franchise right now. At least he is the centerpiece. He's the guy who is going to take the Bucks to the promised land. Um, he's the guy who will be in MVP contention this year, and without him, the Bucks are a pretty lackluster team, in my opinion. Um, and this season is going to be huge for Giannis. Last season was a breakout year for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and this season is going to be could be yet another breakout season for him. Last season he averaged 22.9 points, 5.5 assists, 8.8 rebounds, and about just over a block a game. So those are very impressive numbers, MVP-like even. And I think that he could really improve on those numbers too. The one area where Giannis has to get better this season is in his mid-range and three-point game, and that's the way it's been for him for his entire career so far up to this point. Giannis has always been a imposing player in the paint. He's always been able to get down low and dunk and finish layups, and he just has really lacked that jumper. And last season he actually did improve it a little bit, but I mean he still only shot like 25% from 3-point, and I mean you can't to truly be a superstar in this league as a forward, you really have to improve that, and I think that he has been working on it a lot this offseason, um, and it's really going to be important for him to get that down at least above 30% for three. LeBron James is the greatest player in the world, and LeBron only shoots about 33% from three. He's not a great three-point shooter, so. But Giannis really has to work on that portion of his game, and if he can get that three-point percentage up above 30%, I can't even imagine how good he is. And even if he never figures out this jump shot thing, he's still going to be a superstar. He's still going to be a guy who averages about 20 to 25 points a game, 6 assists, 8 or 9 rebounds, same as last year. He's going to be that level or even better. And last year he was an all-star starter, and he's got a long ways to go on the totem pole. He's still got a long ways to go in his development. So peak Giannis, I can't wait to see what that looks like. And obviously he's going to be the center point piece of this franchise for the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully. So everything the Bucks are going to be this season really revolves around him. He is the X factor for the Bucks. And without Giannis, like I said, the Bucks are a pretty dismal team. They're probably not. They probably wouldn't win more than 25 games at the most. Maybe not even 20. But with Giannis, this team is so much better. It's so much. It's so much more dynamic. And Giannis's length really impacts the game, even when he's not having a great game scoring or anything like that. His defensive impact is huge. And the attention he draws on offense is also huge. It frees up guys like Middleton and Terry to knock down threes, So this guy he's a once-in-a-lifetime talent you're going to see. And honestly, I think at the peak of his career, I think Giannis can be a top 10 player all time in the NBA. He's just freakish. And I mean, last season was amazing for Giannis. It was one of the best seasons we've ever seen by a Milwaukee Buck and a small forward in general. So I mean, and I don't even think that he's halfway to his potential yet. I think he's still got a long ways to go. I think this guy could be a guy who could average about 30 points a game. So But I mean, yeah, like I said, this entire season hinges on Giannis and his development. So enough about Giannis. I'm going to talk a little bit about some other players, key players on this team. Um, Chris Middleton is there's so many question marks around Chris Middleton right now. What is Chris Middleton's ceiling? The big question is, what is the ceiling? Is he a role player? Is he a guy who gives you 15 points a game, he can knock down a few threes and that's it? Or is he a star? Can he average over 20 points a game? Can he shoot 40 to 45% from three? Can he be a lockdown defender? He is a lockdown defender. What is his ceiling? Um, uh, I mean, answering this question is really difficult, but it's something we're probably going to find out this year. And what I'd like to think is that Chris Middleton is a guy who's going to get you 18 to 20 points, and that's about the top value for him. I don't think Chris Middleton is going to get any better than about that. He's a fantastic. He's a lights out shooter. When he's hot, he's hot. He's a fantastic 3-point specialist. He draws a lot of attention sitting behind that 3-point line. His defense is just impeccable. Um, it's one of the it's one of the keys to the Bucks' success in the past few years. Without Middleton, the team, as you remember last year, the Bucks were really struggling with until Middleton came back in. The same game that Middleton came in, I think there was a game that Jabari went down, and the Bucks drastically improved from then on, and they made that final playoff push. Remember, they weren't even in the playoffs to begin with. They made that final push towards the end of the season, and they got there. Um, so Chris Middleton, he might seem like a role player. His ceiling might even be a role player, but his value to this team is just impeccable. It's irreplaceable in my opinion. So um, what he does this season is really going to impact how the Bucks do this season. Same with Giannis. Giannis on a larger scale, obviously, but Chris Middleton could be a guy that's really that could contribute to 18 to 20 points a game. I think he could shoot 40 to 45% from three. He could be one of the best young wings in the entire NBA. So moving on to Malcolm Brogdon. Big question about him is, can he be better than last season? I mean, Malcolm Brogdon seems like a guy who I just felt like last season was about what we're going to get from him. And obviously, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, what we got from Brogdon was really good numbers. He averaged about 10 points a game, 7 assists or so. I mean, he was a really good point guard. He's a really good facilitator. He came up with some big clutch shots later in the year. He's really what the Bucks need, in my opinion. The Bucks need a guy like Brogdon because we don't really need a star point guard. We just need a point guard who doesn't turn it over, who's efficient, who can score you about 5 to 10 points a game, who can dish the ball out really well. And that's what Malcolm Brogdon is. He isn't a selfish player. He's a very unselfish player. He can get the ball to Giannis, to Middleton, to Parker. And that's exactly what we need. I don't really see Malcolm Brogdon ever becoming an all-star or anything like that, but his role on the Bucks fits perfectly with the way the Bucks run things around here. And he can feed the ball to the bigs down low. He can get it to Middleton on the wing. He can get it to Giannis and let him create. He's just in a perfect situation with Milwaukee, and I think that he's going to develop into one of those fan favorite guys, who is never really an all-star, never really a superstar, but always comes up with the big plays, with the clutch moments. A guy like what's his face, Robert Horry, a guy like Robert Horry, a guy who turned it on later in the year and play lights out. His role is really important on the Bucks, even though I don't think he's going to be ever be much better than last season. But moving on, Jabari Parker, is Parker a bust, and is he worth the max contract? Now, this is a really big question for the Bucks that they have to answer this season. Is Parker worth extending, and is he worth the money he's asking for? And in my opinion, he's absolutely not worth a max contract unless he proves it to me this season when he comes back about mid-season. And right now, what I've seen from Jabari Parker, a natural scorer, a guy who can give you 20, 25 points a game, a guy who can shoot the three ball pretty well and expand his range. but a terrible defender. He's really not really that quick on his feet. Um, he's a defensive liability, and I think a big reason why the Bucks were kind of struggling last season early on is because Jabari Parker just couldn't defend guys very well. He let people blow by him. He didn't have very quick feet. He's a very good scorer, a very talented scorer, but he doesn't play much defense, and that's in the Bucks' success last season. A large part of it had to do with their defense, and he was a real he really brought that defense down, and that's why I think that they got Chris Middleton back, they played so much better because his defense is a lot better than Parker's. Um, so this is a make or break season for Parker, and I know that it's going to be rough for him because he's going to be coming back in the middle of the year, and they're going to have to reestablish all the chemistry they had. And he was doing really well last season, except for the defense, obviously. This is just a bad situation for him, and it's going to be honestly, I don't know that the Bucks are really going to be keeping Parker. I even think they might trade him this year, but we'll have to see what happens on that front. Obviously, Parker was drafted to be the second guy to Giannis, so we'll have to see what happens there. He loves being in the city. He loves being a part of the team. So if he's willing to cut down on that max contract, because there's no way, even if he plays lights out the second half of the year, there's no way the Bucks are giving him a max contract. That's just not going to happen. So we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see if his opinion changes or not. We'll have to see how well he does, but those questions will all be answered later on in the year. And another guy I want to talk about, Shawn Makers. What to make of Shawn Makers? Is Shawn Makers a role player like Brogdon, or is he a guy who can have superstar potential? And it's hard to say at this point. He's only been he's only been with Milwaukee for about a year. I think that the ceiling for Shawn Makers, I think he could reach maybe not as high as Kevin Garnett, but he's a player like Kevin Garnett. He's built the same way. He can expand his range for that jumper. He just seems like a guy who would replicate Garnett's play style. And Garnett actually came in, I remember, for a few practices last season and like mentored him and mentored Giannis too. So it'll be interesting to watch his development. Last season, towards the end of the year, he really came on. He got the starting duties for the center position. He had that one game against Detroit where he scored 23 points. He had all those threes. That really showed a lot of his potential in that game. As far as this season goes, I don't think he's more than a 10 points per game guy, 5 rebounds, etc. I still think Greg Monroe is going to be getting a lot of those minutes at center coming off the bench. But in the future, in a couple years down the road, Shawn Makers could really become a guy that the Bucks lean on. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how well Shawn Makers does. Another guy to talk about, Greg Monroe. Greg Monroe, what is his role in Milwaukee? Last season it seemed like trade bait, but down the stretch he seemed like a guy who was vitally important to the Bucks playoff run because he was a spark off the bench when the Bucks needed an offensive spark. They always went to Monroe. Whenever they needed points or were in desperate need of a turning point in the game, they always went to Monroe. They had him post up, down low, and his post moves were so good. He's one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best scorers in basketball from the center position. He's just so good down low. He's obviously his defense is a liability. He did improve a little bit last season, but it's still not. I mean, Makers is a better defender than Monroe at this point, but his spark off the bench is something that the Bucks really value. And if he's willing to have a role like that for the rest of his career, then I think that he has a place in Milwaukee. But I don't know that Greg Monroe is going to be wanting to come off the bench for the rest of his career because he's absolutely a starter material. He could be of a lot of value to a lot of other teams in the league. So, in my opinion, this might be his last year with Milwaukee. We might trade him. He might opt out at the end of the year. We don't know. But as of right now, he's a pretty vital part of the Milwaukee bench. So we'll have to see how that plays out for Greg Monroe and the Bucks. In this season, to me, it's really just finding out what this Bucks team is. What is its end goal? What is the ceiling for all these players? Can they support Giannis? Can they build around Giannis? Can they become the stars that they were drafted to be? Or are they doomed to let Giannis carry this team every single season like he kind of did last year? Um, I mean, if the Bucks can't get Giannis a team, if they can't field a team that's worthy of championship consideration and before Giannis's contract is up, I don't know if Giannis is going to stay with the Bucks because he said that he wanted to stay in Milwaukee, that he was loyal to the team because he was in debt for them drafting him. But is Giannis really? I mean, he if we can't build the team around Giannis, why would you want to stay there? I mean, we saw it with Kevin Durant. I mean, it was either him or Russell Westbrook, obviously. But if the Bucks can't build a team around Giannis, then this whole rebuild thing, this whole championship dream, it's out the window. So we have to just wait and see what happens with all these young players. And I really hope that they all really develop. And I really hope that Shawn Makers becomes like Kevin Garnett and Jabari Parker comes back strong and doesn't ask for that max contract. And I hope that Chris Middleton reaches his potential. And if everybody on this Bucks team reaches their potential, they are absolutely a championship caliber team. Maybe even next season after this year. I don't think they're a championship team this year at all because of all the superstars around the league. I think that they could realistically make a push for the Eastern Conference Finals. I think this is the year the Bucks finally win a playoff series, but I don't think that a championship is on the table right now. Which leads me to my record predictions. I think the Bucks will win 51 games. I'll set it at 51 games. I think they'll win 51 games, which would mean they go 51-31. Giannis will have a really good year again. He'll average about 25, I think, this year instead of 23. I think he'll be a serious MVP candidate. I don't think he'll win it, but even going down towards the end of the year, he'll still be in consideration all the way through. I think the Bucks will win a playoff series. I think they'll beat either the Raptors or the Washington Wizards. I think that we'll probably get knocked out in the second round. If we're lucky, we might get to the third round because of how weak the East is this year. It's really all one team, and it's the Cavs. The Boston Celtics, I don't think, are going to be nearly as good as they were last year. I think that Isaiah Thomas trade was really silly of them to do. Kyrie Irving isn't a guy who can carry a team. But we'll have to see what happens. I'm really optimistic about the Bucks this season, and I can't wait to see what happens. So, anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. As always, guys, leave a like and subscribe. And I just can't wait for the Bucks this year. It's an early season. It starts October 18th at Boston, so we'll have to see what happens. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.